Welcome to the AICPA Town Hall Series, your resource for the latest news and updates on pressing issues facing the accounting profession.
Good afternoon and welcome to the AICPA Town Hall Series. I'm Eric Auskerson, one of your hosts for today, and you can see I'm in the New York studio, and with me is Gene Marks. Gene, it's great to have you with us.
Very happy to be here, Eric.
Well, Gene, as I think many of you know, is one of the leading boots on the ground for the profession. As you were telling me a few minutes ago, he's out there speaking all the time to the small business community. He also speaks regularly to CPA firms and state societies and at events, some of the largest events that we have, such as AICPA Engage. So what I'm going to do now is kind of quickly cover the agenda and then bring up Mark Peterson. So we're gonna kick things off with Mark talking about the DC and profession update. Welcome, Mark. Great to see you.
Good to see you, Eric.
And then we're gonna have a small business environment discussion with Gene Marks. After that, Lisa Simpson will be joining us, bringing some very important and timely technical updates. And then we're gonna have an elder planning discussion, which Lisa will lead with Dan Snyder, who's one of the subject matter experts at the AICPA, and he focuses on financial planning and elder planning, among other things. And then we'll have our open forum to close things out. So, Mark, this is a picture that we use a lot on town halls. So it's kind of a new picture here. So the latest from DC. There was some developments with Speaker Johnson yesterday, and my understanding is he's still Speaker of the House.
He is still Speaker of the House. There's this kind of an ongoing drama, right, since Speaker McCarthy didn't want to challenge the motion to vacate. And this has been hanging over Speaker Johnson's head. And finally, the button was pushed so that all it takes is one member to have a motion to vacate brought. And there had been, real discussion about whether Democrats would cross the aisle to support a Republican speaker, and they did, actually overwhelmingly. So Speaker Johnson survived to fight another day. Again, this was brought up by just a hand. The issue is that all it takes is one member to bring the motion to vacate to the floor. And then once it's on the floor, people have to they have to vote up or down, yay or nay. So that put a little more pressure on it. I will say this, though, Eric, just because there was this support that came from across the aisle this time, not necessarily is it going to happen next time. And it's all facts and circumstance and politics.
And Mark, as you said, I mean, is it the first time in modern history that, the other party voted to elect someone from the opposing party to be Speaker of the House? Absolutely.
The election of the Speaker, during the election of the Speaker, they may pick a third candidate, but to cross the aisle for a motion to vacate, absolutely historic.
Yeah. Well, Mark, we're going to kick things off with talking about some of these must-pass vehicles, and I like this. Possible passengers. Who could get the last ride out of the station potentially on one of these must-pass bills?
Well, and this is kind of the story that you've heard from us, Eric, is that their regular order has basically broken down, and so must pass legislation authorizing bills or funding bills that absolutely have to happen are really the only things that are going to make it to the president's desk. And so we look at those as possible riders for some of the profession's priorities. So right now they're in the middle of debating the FAA bill. The House just voted for an extension of that. The Senate's grappling with it literally today to figure out what they're going to do. They may just kick the can down the road to give themselves another week because that authorization is set to expire. But what these bills do is it's a possibility, for example, for tax provisions to be added. And we've definitely got some priorities there. We supported the legislation that was focused on 179 and research and experiment. And those issues have to find a vehicle to be attached to. So you've got the FAA. There are several other authorizing bills that are possibilities. The problem with adding, extraneous issues to these bills is that they start to get pulled under by them. Mm-hmm. And so how much they can bear is a real question. And then we get into the fall and they've got to fund the government again at the end of September. And so that's going to be an opportunity to potentially do something big. There's some issues that we're looking at. There have been efforts to address the cannabis and the conflict between states where it's legalized and the federal prohibition, which puts the profession in a tough situation, and also some administrative tax issues that we've been proponents of related to things like the safe harbor for extensions, 125% of previous year, the regulation of tax repairers, and several others. The other opportunity, so you've got these bills that you might be able to attach to, which is only a handful, and then you've got the government funding bill at the end of September, and then post-election, will there be a lame duck? And what we've seen in recent history, Eric, is that they will, in a bipartisan way, look at things that they absolutely have to get done, but they do not have the political fortitude to extend them for a full year. So they just kick them into the lame duck, and then they can resolve them in the lame duck. So that would be another opportunity for some of these bipartisan issues to happen. And by the way, all those examples I gave you are bipartisan. There's bipartisan support. It's just the vehicle.
Well, Mark, we got questions coming in. One on just the Wyden-Smith, status. Where does that stand? Is that now history?
Not yet. It's not history. That was when I referred to 179 and research and experiment. That's the bill, and the sponsors of the bill, Senator Wyden and Chairman Smith, are holding out hope. It was a very, very strong bipartisan vote coming out of the House. It's locked up in the Senate, and so they're going to hold out hope. I have to be honest with you, from a handicapping perspective. Each day that goes by, each week that goes by closer to the election, less likely to happen. But they're still holding out hope that there could be a deal that would be negotiated to get it attached to one of these opportunities I mentioned.
Okay. Well, Mark, we've been talking about beneficial ownership information, beneficial ownership reporting, as noted here, since the start of the year, or even before the start of the year.
Yeah, no, we haven't. It's still, a question that we get. I just was speaking at a tax conference yesterday, and it came up. So just a couple things, and we've mentioned these in the past, but there are some new developments. A Small Business Association, NSBA, has actually filed suit. They got an injunction for their members, about 70,000 members, about having to comply with BOI. We sent a letter to FinCEN, to Treasury, that got 54 signatures from all the state societies as well as the AICPA, saying there should be a 1-year delay following the resolution of these legal actions. This is going to happen. This focus on money laundering is there. It's going to be a theme that we're going to see going forward when you think about geopolitics right now. But we know that small businesses are not ready, and the numbers are huge. Like, this is going to impact close to 33 million entities, and then you add 5 million per year. And so really the case we're making is we need some more time. And then the other development, Eric, is draft legislation that's out. It'll be introduced fairly shortly, and we're going to make sure that we can get a link out to it. But it addresses some of the questions we're getting about, unlawful practice of law. And basically it would be a federal preemption that would say that CPAs and advisors that are helping clients with information related to BOI don't have to worry about, they have a liability safe harbor, and it also addresses specifically the unlawful practice of law. We haven't seen any challenges in the states, so I still would move forward with working with your clients, but this would be a belts and suspenders that I think would give people a lot of comfort. Now, having said that, this fits into my other theme, which was it's got to find a vehicle that's moving.
Well, Mark, I want to bring Gene up into this discussion here. That when you think about BOI, it's like everything with new regulation. We all were trying to get our arms around it at the start of the year. We hadn't even seen the forms yet, and we were talking about would it be covered by your professional liability policy. And then we had this unauthorized UPL, the unauthorized practice of law issue. And where it's at right now is, I think, everyone's beginning to understand it more. It seems like there is going to be some legislation to improve it, or to make it more understandable to support. And then, so Gene, when you think about this and you think about business broader than just beneficial ownership information reporting, but supporting your small business clients or just your clients related to a business filing service. And this is something that we are working on behind the scenes. There are solution providers that can help with this, plus just the filing services for your business. So I think as this year progresses, the courts and FinCEN are going to work through these matters. Maybe there'll be some legislation that makes it more manageable. And then we're also going to see solution providers. And I'm talking to a lot of firms, and others are talking to firms about this potentially being a service line.
There's no question about it. And we need to get ahead of it. I mean, I think, Eric, that we're going to see a lot of what we saw with the ERTC. I think there's got to be a lot of shops are going to be coming out there and starting to pound away at our clients and saying that hire us to do the work. And they will certainly do an inferior level of work than a good CPA would do. And I can also say, I mean, you said to me about being boots on the ground. So I speak about 60 times a year to industry groups around the country, thousands of small and mid-sized business owners. When I bring up this issue, Mark, about the BOI, they are looking at me with just blank stares. They're just not aware of this. And it is an issue that they need to be aware of. I mean, fines are up to $10,000 if they don't do this.
Yes, they are.
And they're not getting, the Treasury is doing a very poor job of spreading awareness. Yep. It's not like they're being told, and you have to proactively go onto their site and complete the form. So it's absolutely an opportunity. And honestly, Eric, I think it's a responsibility of us.
But it's not just about BOI. I mean, it's like a business filing supports. It's a compliance service related to business registration.
And it changes every year. I mean, if there's any change in ownership of your company, or if you're filing any new form, it's an ongoing thing, and it hits right to it has a financial impact. And I think that we as CPAs need to be well aware and get ahead of it. I think it's an opportunity.
So I'm sure there's questions coming in on that right now, but we will continue. We'll continue to talk about this. We'll continue to bring you the latest information about the legislation and court cases, but also about how to potentially build that into your practice strategy. And it's a decision. It's a decision. It's not something that you have to do. You could also refer your client to somebody else to take care of the service. Well, Mark, with the tax filing season for 2023 is still occurring. A lot of extensions, but here's the numbers from the IRS through I think just like last week. So what you see here is from the same time in 2023 to the same time in 2024, the total returns received by the IRS. This information is from the IRS's website. You can see how many were processed, the number of e-filings that occurred, and then the amount from tax professionals and from the self-prepared market. You look at these stats, Gene. It's so nothing's jumping out. I mean, last year there was 160 million returns for the 2022 filing season. So you still have, you do the math here. You still have about another 25 million returns or so that are going to be coming in, and you're going to have more coming in from tax professionals than self-prepared. One thing that you and I were talking about before we got on was it's pretty stagnant right now between where the do-it-yourself market, the self-prepared, and the market that's supported by tax professionals.
Right. And the do-it-yourself market it's always going to be a market that's there. It's just something that we have to accept. But we always know we'll provide a better service than I think people doing it on their own. A couple of things that strike out at me. First of all, this tax season, Eric, was unquestionably it was uneventful for most people. I mean, and when you look back, come on, only a couple of years ago, all the stress that we were going through, I really do feel like we are back to like 2019 levels of stress. Not that that's great.
I think we'll see. There might be some comments coming in related to that.
People disagreeing with that. Right. And then my only other comments, if you notice that the average refund amount is going up. And I think to myself, no. As CPAs, we need to get that down to zero, not going the other way around. There should be no refunds. We should be right on target. So that was my only other comment. Only other than that, I mean, it's a pretty stagnant. The numbers themselves are pretty consistent.
Mark, I mean, the IRS service levels seem to have been a little bit higher. You've got your teams very active with the IRS. That comment?
We've got a survey out that's closed that we'll be getting back that we'll be rolling out at May Council, Eric, that will give us our feedback about, what the profession thought about service levels. But I have to tell you, based on just the feedback that we've gotten during tax season, the noise seems to be down. Now, you never know if that's because people have gotten used to challenging service, or whether things have gotten better. I do think the drama of these past filing seasons has died down, and we're getting to what's still tough. Wouldn't say it's not tough, but to kind of the new normal, kind of pre-pandemic. And then, there's the IRS got a bunch of money, and that's starting to work its way through the system. Most of that is for enforcement, but there are also funds that are coming in to help things. We wish more for service, but at least some around technology.
So, well, let's just quickly talk about the IRS Direct File program. This is getting a lot of comments from the Treasury Secretary Yellen, the IRS Commissioner. We just showed you 140 million returns filed to date, 140,000 filings through the Direct File program. Mark, they call this it's free to users, but it's obviously not a free service. It's costing the IRS tens of millions of dollars. So there is taxpayers are paying for this service, and this is something that was a pilot. And there's going to be a lot. I think people will be unpacking this further. The average return for these filings is smaller. That could just be based on the group of filers in this 140,000. So, Mark, I think they'll be talking about this in a few hearings coming up.
Oh no, 100%. There'll be a focus on this. I mean, from a policy perspective, there is a political interest in trying to figure out how to help taxpayers, low-income taxpayers, and make it easy. And why can't you do that? But there's going to be, how much per filing did it cost to do 140,000? I have heard a stat that there were 3 million logins to see if there was eligibility, but you still only had 140,000 that went through with filing through the program. So the leadership's calling it a success, which isn't a surprise. We will see, because the scrutiny will come out about what's the cost of the program. I think there is agreement in the goal of the program, but you also have to compare that against, the market and software providers on the private side, and what makes sense.
Gene, comments?
I don't know if, as a profession, if this is worthy of us paying a lot of attention to it. I mean, these are very low-income taxpayers. It's service that's there to facilitate them. I don't foresee them as being, high-paying clients of ours or clients at all. And if it's the type of service that the government can provide to, get these people to file their returns and even take advantage of certain credits like dependent care and things like that, I'm 100% in favor. I mean, again, I don't think it conflicts in any way with most of the services that we as CPAs do. That's just my take.
I think it's right. It doesn't conflict, and I think what it will do, though, it will broaden the discussion.
It will.
I mean, there's been a free file program in place for years. So with the software providers, and I think what it will do is people say, okay, you've got this governmental option, you've got commercial options, and then you have preparers, tax professionals, CPA firms. And I think one thing to look at is it's about what type of service levels and sophistication do you want. So that's all. I think it's a good discussion. And I think people just will think about it. Okay, this is how do I want to have this service supported? In other governments, it's another thing it's different, Mark, here. In the U.S., a lot of the social policy and policies of the United States are directed through the tax code.
That's right. We complicate it. We utilize it to drive policy. And a lot of other countries, they don't do that, which complicates it. And we're going to have members of the town hall community that may have a little concern over this because of what it could become. And so, we'll watch it closely and see. And like you noted, Eric, there's going to be a lot of scrutiny over the cost benefit of this. Again, from a policy perspective, though, there is interest in trying to figure out how to kind of, help this end of taxpayers.
Well, let's move to the small business environment. And, one thing small businesses deal with, Mark, is a lot of regulations.
Yes,
We're going to talk
they do.
about small business climate in a moment with Gene, but This is I mean, the right-hand side of this slide, or the banning non-competes. This is a poster from the Federal Trade Commission.
And if I could just say, Mark, because I'm anxious to hear your thoughts on this, but you know where I just said a few minutes ago, where I talked to all these groups and they blank stares when it comes to BOI and Corporate Transparency Act. This non-compete rule, everybody knows about it. Like everybody's jumping up and down about it.
No, it popped. I mean, I don't if you recall, but President Biden mentioned the fact that non-competes regulating non-competes in one of his State of the Unions. Now, the examples he used were not professionals. The examples he used were Lyft and Uber or Subway or Jimmy John's. However, it was a 400-page rule that came out that's has been finalized. It's going to be going effective 120 days after it's printed in the the Federal Register. Lawsuits are flying around that this is questioning the constitutionality. This is incredibly broad and deep for the FTC, and so there's going to be a lot of challenges here. We have concerns, and AICPA has made our concerns known during the process about the impact on professionals, and so we're gonna see how this plays out. We're engaging on Capitol Hill. I will say there is sympathy for, again, Uber and Lyft for the occupations and how this may be a barrier to upward mobility. That's different than at the professional level when your teams leave at the end of the day. It's most of your business's capital is walking out the door, and so this is going to continue to get a focus. And we'll be watching the courts very closely as this moves through.
Yeah, if I can add to that, and I'm really curious to hear comments from the town hall community on this as well. That because I just wrote a piece for this that's coming out in the Hill about this non-compete rule. Yes, non-competes are going to be banned. Okay, we have a small window for it. So an employee can't leave our company, and then they can now feel free to leave and work for a competitor down the street or open up a business, in our neighborhood. Okay, but there is still ways to protect ourselves. And when I speak to any of my clients, their biggest issue, Eric, is an employee leaving with their customer list or proprietary data, or it's all about intellectual property leaving their company and going to be used by a competitor. So, what we're telling our clients right now is now the time, and you can use, we'll work with you, but also an attorney. We need to revisit confidentiality agreements and NDAs. If non-competes are now not going to be a thing, we want to go back to all of our employees and say, we need to make sure that these things are updated and ironclad. And that's a way that we can protect ourselves if an employee leaves and goes somewhere else. So that's the advice that we've been giving.
Well, that's excellent advice. And Mark, I know you've been thinking about this too.
Well, and so non-solicit, right? So non-compete's bullseye. But there is some question about whether like a non-solicit is caught by this, and it really depends on how broadly it's written. And so reviewing the partnership agreements to see how the other elements of a non-compete are written, you could actually be carved out of this. And so we're going to also be kind of, as we work through this and as the legal teams go through it, we'll have more feedback for the membership as well, because definitely non-competes, but there are areas around that, NDAs, confidentiality, non-solicits, where it depends on how it's written.
Right.
And so more to play out.
Yeah, more to play out. A bunch of questions came in on this, so I definitely want to make sure we address related to selling of a practice.
Good, I'm glad you brought that up.
So why don't I'll let you kind of answer that, because I think that's very important.
So definitely there are provisions to allow for the sale, and to
the sale.
Yes,
exactly right. That's there. And also 1.2 is they grandfather in senior executives. It's in a slide here. Senior executives over a certain comp threshold, which is true for current employees. That is not true going forward. And then you also have that this is not in effect during a sale. I'm not sure if that was in your article, Gene.
Yeah, and there's also a grandfather rule as well for people that work for nonprofits affiliated in the healthcare industry. There's also a carve out there. So there are some carve outs, but to get back to it, I agree completely with Mark, Eric, and for the people that are asking questions on this, there's specific carve outs when you are selling a business, so that you can still have non-compete provisions, involved for the buyer or the seller of the business. So you want to look into that and make sure.
And you're going to look into that with an attorney because
Of
you're selling the business, so
course.
that will all be managed. So let's move now to talk, as you said, boots on the ground. Gene, you've been with a bunch of small businesses over the past 2 weeks. I think we're all very familiar with the National Federation of Independent Businesses. Someone who's been on a town hall before, Bill Dunkelberg, the NFIB chief economist, commenting on inflation. And this, what really struck me about this recent report that just came out 2 weeks ago, March 2024, about a month ago, is the small business optimism has reached the lowest level since 2012. And there's a lot of things going on back in 2012.
No doubt. Yeah, it's time to break out the Jack Daniels.
So what do you? So is that these headwinds here?
Yeah, there are headwinds. There again. Here's what I hear from the audiences that I speak to is it's costs. I mean, it is, and I know that you're going to talk about a report that came from Goldman Sachs as well, which is a very similar theme along this way. Inflation itself is now down to about a 3 to 4% level, depending on which factor that you're looking at. So that's good, but I mean, geez, Eric, you go around to industry after industry and you look at the core costs of their running, iron and steel, packaging materials, construction materials, cement.
I mean, this is your kind of high, the Goldman Sachs really unpacks this.
Yeah. Fertilizer, feeds, I mean, across all industries.
Right.
And again, I if you go to the St. Louis Fed's reserve site, it's called Fred, and they provide all this great data. And you look at the costs of where things were like just 2-3 years ago versus now, and this is a political issue, I think, for the president. You have many business owners that are out there dealing with anywhere from 15 to 40, 50% higher costs than they were just 2 to 3 years ago. It's jumped that much, and businesses have not caught up to that. And now they're hitting headwinds with potentially slowing consumer demand and still high interest rates. And all of that turns into why their optimism is down the way they are, and why you see in this Goldman Sachs report why so many are complaining that their cost of running their business. And you can only raise prices so much.
So, I mean, this is where the trust advisor needs to come in. So there's a lot of steps that need to be taken so to help the businesses with all of these price increases.
Yeah, you should. And it's when I speak to CPA associations around the country, I can't emphasize enough what an opportunity this is for us, because we have small and mid-sized business owners that are desperately trying to figure out really what their margins are, how to price their products, how to target their pricing on products. It's not just about having a 6% price increase across the board, but can we tailor price increases depending on profitability of customers and other factors like that? These are all things that we as CPAs can really help our clients with, and they're struggling. And these reports from Goldman Sachs, Eric, and the NFIB, they're only underscoring the fact that they're really struggling with these issues. And we have labor is another issue, and obviously technology investments are also high. And then there's the cost of capital. So, the prime rate's at 8.5% right now, and most of my clients are paying 2-3 points above that. And it's making it tough for them to figure out ROI.
Well, Mark, we got election season coming up. So this small business optimism is something that the candidates are going to feel. And we got a lot of comments coming in here about, potential, economic slowdown or even recession as we head into the end of this year.
I think it's a known unknown, right? So this is happening. It's underreported. From a national perspective, you don't hear about this, but the on the ground impact of this as people go to the polls, I think, is real. And you will see both of the candidates trying to figure out how to address it. This is going to be a significant issue going into the election. Absolutely.
And Gene, comments coming in just on firms, the firms and how their this year is going to shape out from a profitability standpoint with the firm. I mean, firms have been raising their compensation, their costs are going up. And
we can't raise our rates any more than we can raise them. To go back to our clients and continue to raise our hourly rates or our fees for our projects, it becomes more and more difficult. So firms are faced with this challenge of dealing with, with this rising cost of labor. And, obviously in our profession, our business, our inventories are people. There's a shortage of skilled, people. And so we are struggling to bring them on and pay them in a way that it's affordable for our firms to manage as well. So in my opinion, I think that it's not a matter of just controlling our costs, but I think it's going after certain opportunities. And I've been telling them that there's two big opportunities that are out there for our clients to help them grow. One is to sell them services to help them with cost control, because they don't know what we know how to do that. The second, I got to tell you, there's a lot of government money, almost $2 trillion flowing from previous stimulus bills over the past couple of years, the CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. And I got to give a shout out. There's one agency called Apex Accelerators. It's APEX. And I stress the CPAs. You look at Apex Accelerators, they're a part of the Department of Defense. They help us and help our clients get government contracts. That's what their mandate is for small and mid-sized businesses. So one other thing that we can do to help our clients is to help them. Many of them are afraid to do so or hesitant to do so. It's a practice building opportunity. That's my advice.
Well, Gene, thanks. And why don't we've got if you want to hear more about the shifting economic landscape, what's going on with the small businesses, with CPA firms, and some of the best practices that Gene's highlighting here to leverage, you can listen to the Digital CPA podcast. So Gene, thanks for doing that. We also have these other tools to help related to running your advisory practice. One thing that is a bigger topic for firms is supporting their clients with financial planning and analysis. So we've got a white paper on FP&A. We also have some additional information related to supporting your clients with some of these fintech tools and helping them with some of their financing needs. And that's one thing that even SBA loans is fintechs that are helping with the SBA loan process, but that takes time, and you might want to get some working capital loans quicker. So these are all types of services that the firms can educate themselves on and offer more optionality to their clients. And
your clients don't have the people or the resource to do it themselves, and they look to us to help them. There's many opportunities to provide those services.
So let's just bring Lisa Simpson up for a second. I'll thank Gene, but Lisa's could have had Lisa Simpson in this whole dialogue. So Lisa, tax season, small businesses, any thoughts as you transition and bring up Dan Snyder for the next segment?
I've recently been with a lot of different firms, and I think they would tell you that the tax season from most standpoints went better than the last couple, but there was a lot of uncertainty around that tax legislation that dropped but then didn't go anywhere. So that created so much anxiety and confusion with their clients. So now they're trying to figure out how to manage the rest of tax season, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But also talking about talent supply. We surveyed some of the firms between, let's say, 100 and 500. And there seemed to be some firms that said their staffing position was a little better. And then some firms that still said that they were looking for people. I actually missed the last town hall because I was talking to my alma mater's accounting program, trying to get a few more of them to say yes to joining us in the best profession in the world. And I think I convinced some of them. So we'll talk about that as well, just how we can help attract more people into the profession. And salaries are a big component of that.
Well, thanks, Lisa. And Gene, we'll have you back in open forum. So with that, Lisa, I'll let you move on with the next segments here.
Thank you very much, and happy to be back. So let's start with, I hate to even bring this up, but a flashback to 2020, which I don't know about you guys, but I've tried to block a lot of. And as a reminder, back in 2020, the individual filing deadline was extended to May 17th because of the COVID-19 shutdowns. So what that means today, why am I bringing up all of that old pain, is because now you're facing the deadline if you need to file for a refund, or if you need to file for an amended return if you did not file for an extension. So I just wanted to make sure that was on your radar because it's different, and wanted to make sure that you have that May 17 date marked on your calendar if there are clients that you need to address that with. So let's get away from that pain and talk about an issue that's been coming up around filing for transcript requests. And we've got some information on how a change in the IRS process. You used to be able to call several different types of IRS phone numbers, but effective in April, if we can flip to the next slide, please. In April, the IRS said that they would only accept those calls for transcripts through the practitioner priority service line. So this is all in an effort to combat identity theft and to put a few more controls around it. This is not the only way to get a transcript request. So we've given you a link to the delivery systems that you can use, but there's some confusion about where to find that short ID. What is the short ID that the IRS is asking for? So we've got some information there to help you track down your short ID and to look for other ways if you need to get those transcripts. In other IRS news, they came out with some FAQs for distributions from retirement plans related to disasters. And this goes back to the IRS building out its guidance around Secure 2.0. And this particular set of FAQs addresses situations where, for example, an individual had their primary residence impacted by a federally declared disaster. So there are some special benefits that they can take around tax relief, or if their retirement plan, if their employer's retirement plan is set up to allow them to take loans, there are some more generous loan repayment options. A lot of fine tuning and details there. So if you've got clients who are impacted by that, we just suggest that you go check out those FAQs for the details. And we also have some regulations that have just come out related to provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act that Jean mentioned earlier. And these are around clean vehicle credits and clean energy credit transfers. So this is going to give you guidance as to how buyers can transfer those credits to dealers at the point of sale. I used to have several auto dealerships when I was in practice, so I thought that I just wanted to call this out for you because I know it is quite a big, dense population of clients in the profession. So you want to know how to help your clients through that process. Also, clean energy credit transfers are an option for someone who's for an entity who's eligible for a transfer to or for a credit to transfer it to another entity. So the regulations have given specific rules for partnerships and S corps around that. And the nuance is that they have to pre-file through an established process. So you'll get more information about that through those Journal of Accountancy links that are in your slides. And that's a great reminder. Always make sure that you're downloading your slides from the materials today, because we have hyperlinks to all of the things that we've talked about and all of the resources that we're going to give you. So make sure you grab those slides, and we have some other great resources for you as well. All right, I'm going to switch gears a little bit because we are now past April 15, and I'm hoping that we can take some time, if you're in the tax realm, to think about what's next. And I came across an amazing article from Brandon Lagarde and Mark Gallegos, two volunteers with our Tax Practice Management Committee, that has several things that I think you'd be really well served by thinking about. And the first one is, making sure you just run a debrief or a postmortem, whatever you want to call it. The next topic is around managing extensions. As I talk to firm leaders of all sizes, seriously all sizes, they're struggling with how to get those returns done now that they've been extended, so that we can avoid these intense crunch periods at September 15 and October 15. How can you keep the work flowing throughout the summer? So from my perspective, I think it's a very deliberate process that firm leaders need to take, setting some goals and deadlines around how to keep that work moving internally. And then another important topic is always about determining which clients aren't the right fit. And I'm going to give you some great resources around that. But before we do that, I wanted to remind you about some upcoming Reimagining Your Tax Practice sections. The first one is on prioritizing and strategies for being efficient and driving growth now that we've passed the April 15 deadline. And then in June, there's a session around developing an assistant for your work personality. I'm going to check that one out. And we have the whole Reimagining Your Tax Practice series is available for free if you watch it live. And our tax practice section members are able to access the archives as well. So I mentioned Client Fit, and this is where I really want to show you some of the resources and some of the why behind why we keep bringing this up as an opportunity. Jean mentioned that firms are still struggling with tax staff or with staff in general, and they're thinking that they can't raise their rates. And I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because I think that if we're working with the right clients and if we're building deeper relationships, then we have the opportunity to show our deeper value and price accordingly. So from our perspective, if you're looking at right sizing, it really does help with capacity issues. It lets you form those deeper relationships because you have more time to spend with individual clients. And when I say individual, that means individual or business. You can be more profitable. You can develop your staff more quickly. And I know that's a common issue that I hear firms bring up. If you are not going through the crunch of a grueling busy season, then your talent retention should improve. And then if you're, again, serving those clients on a deeper basis, you should also be improving the client loyalty, because you're creating a stickiness and adding more value to the services that you're getting. All of that sounds great. I'm sure you're all going to buy in because Lisa said to do all of this. So let's look at some of the resources and some other things that I have for you, because it's not just Lisa that says all of this. I was told very early on in my career with the AICPA that just because I said so didn't make it right, and that people would like to listen to their peers. What are your peers doing? How are they actually making these changes? And so that's what we've got for you. We've got some podcasts that talk about how to reduce your client base and build out those advisory services. One of the pushbacks I get when I talk to CPAs, especially in small towns, is that they don't want to fire their pastor. They don't want to. They don't want to fire clients because they're going to see them at the baseball field or in the grocery store. And the second bullet point there on podcasts is an example of a conversation with a practitioner in a small town who did this, and he addressed up front the implications of letting go of clients in a small town. So I thought that'd be good for you. The next one is one of my favorite podcasts with a small firm practitioner about how she called clients, took her a couple of tries to impact her health. And then we've got a podcast on how to say goodbye, and also an article, but at the top of that slide is the toolkit that we've developed for you. In your resources, you're going to find an action plan that will get excerpted from that toolkit, just to give you an idea. But go to that link and you'll see all of the other things that we have available to you to support you through this process. All right. And with that, I'm gonna completely zig, kind of, sort of. Next up with me is Dan Snyder. Dan is a director in our personal financial planning division. Dan's been on here several times. I know a lot of you know him. For me, it's always a highlight, and because I always learn so much from when Dan joins us. And this one was actually my ask, because I saw this new resource that the personal financial planning section had released around healthcare and transitions. So Dan and I started talking about it, and there's an entire segment around elder care planning. I know that that's something that so many of us are dealing with. And if we're not dealing with it today, we're going to be dealing with it in the future, either from a personal standpoint or from a client perspective. So with that as background, I want to welcome Dan, and we're going to be a little depressing here in the beginning. So just bear with us. We're gonna show you some of the resources that we have to help with these very difficult conversations. So welcome, Dan. Thanks for coming back.
Great, Lisa. Thanks for having me back here. Yeah, this first slide, we just want to kind of set the environment a little bit to kind of show the magnitude of what is happening out there. We know that 6 in 10 adults are living with chronic illness. When we talk about this, we're talking about Alzheimer's, we're talking about Parkinson's, those types of things, but it could also be earlier. It could be a result of a traumatic brain injury or something along those lines. So it's not just older people, but we know that by 2030, all of baby boomers will now be past 65. We know that a third of the people that are currently over 86 have some type of Alzheimer's or some type of dementia-related disease. So the challenge that we have is we know this bubble is working its way through, and it's only going to be a bigger situation that many clients are going to be addressing. I think as we know, it's a stressful situation. I've been through it in my own family with my stepmom. I have cousins that have been diagnosed with ALS at my age. So it's a real stressful time for families. And one of the things from accounting profession, to get back to the positive side of things again, is that the CPA profession has an opportunity to really be able to notice when things like this are happening, maybe signs of dementia, and to really be able to bring some stability to the clients, really troubling time for clients.
Thanks for that setup. Let's look at some of the ways that CPAs can get engaged in these conversations. And before we start, I do want to say that when Dan and I were talking about this, my initial reaction was, wait a minute, Dan, I can't do this for every client. I can't take on this role for my standalone 1040s. What's my engagement letter going to look like? How am I going to price this? So I want you to know we're going to talk about all that. So don't think that you have to become a healthcare expert. But Dan, let's dive into some of your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good point, because regardless, even if you offered this as a service offering, you're still not the healthcare expert, and that is not what the position we're asking people to do, and that's not our strength. So the idea is for everybody, all the CPAs, as you're dealing with your clients, it starts with a conversation. It's an opportunity for you to be aware of what's happening in your clients' lives, particularly when you're working with individuals and families, to be able to have those that time of observing what's happening. But also understand that it's about a team when it comes to these types of things. There's financial professionals. Depending on your service offering, you might be involving other investment or insurance professionals. There may be non-financial professionals, such as the healthcare workers, the medical teams, the government agencies. And the other thing I would say is, don't discount the fact of a family member that maybe can take charge or take ownership from a family, maybe the next generation down from the client that's there. And that really makes it a little bit easier on the process when somebody really steps up. Because when that doesn't happen, then that's one of the challenges you run into, is how do you get the family dynamics to come together when maybe the client has been a little private about the way they've held their financial situation. So I think, I think one of these things, when you look at, we talk about a champion inside the family. In today's world of families, we have geographic dispersion like we've never had. And so many times as a CPA or somebody can come in and be able to address some of these issues from a distance, then it allows the family, those that are diagnosed with this, to be able to stay in a common situation, not to have to uproot and go to Phoenix because that's where their kids are, or something along those lines. So it can really be a stabilizing effect on the family again. I think that as we talked about from a fee standpoint, you have the option of how deep do you want to get into this? Because just like any other service, if it's not something you're competent for or comfortable with, then there are other professionals that you can refer people to. But it doesn't change the fact that you need to be aware and listening to your client there. If you do choose to go into this from a service offering standpoint, then certainly I've seen CPAs that are billing for it on an hourly basis or billing for it on a fee basis. And just as an example, if you have clients that are getting older, they may present you with a question around nursing homes. I've got 5 nursing homes within 50 miles of my house. Which one is going to present the best one? And our CPA's perspective on being able to analyze contracts, look at the cost, look at the benefits, the questions that need to be asked, and it really comes in, and it's a real help for the family along those lines. One of the things that I think is really important is that this whole topic becomes a real natural progression and transition for the next generation. And I don't want to underemphasize. You think of elder, planning, and you think, oh, that's for the older people. But the reality is, at the client level, these discussions are naturally going to force the next generation at the client level to come into those conversations. And so this is a perfect opportunity that maybe as the partner in the firm maybe doesn't want to get into this level of detail. Maybe there's a junior person in the firm that can maybe take this on as a specialty. And then as they connect as the next successor within a succession plan, they can connect with the next generation of clients and again, transfer that trust from one generation to another. So
And
I think,
Dan,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, as we flip to the next slide, I just wanted to say that's an interesting point, because our research shows that a lot of people are drawn into the profession and they want to know that their work has meaning and that their work has purpose. And I think that is absolutely a way to show that your work has purpose. It also ties to the client fit and making sure that you're working with the right clients and that you're able to develop those deeper relationships with fewer clients. So that's kind of the tie back to some of the other things we've been talking about. So we've only got a couple of minutes left. So why don't you hit some of the highlights on this?
Yeah, let's just hit a couple highlights. The first is awareness, just being aware of what's happening. That means being alert with your clients, being understanding of what's happening. But then the question is, when a diagnosis happens, one of the easiest things you can do is just understand what those symptoms are and what that progression looks like, so you can understand whether, how that's going to potentially affect their financial topics like you see on the screen. From a community standpoint, it's a great opportunity to be involved in your community, whether it's through understanding the local care options and housing options so you can better advise your clients, or perhaps for not-for-profit organizations like Alzheimer's. They've got opportunities for community educators and champions to be able to give seminars and different things, and they provide all the resources. On the AICPA side, as Lisa mentioned at the very beginning, we have the Health Transitions Guide that we just came out with, 4-part guide. What we've done is we've made a excerpt from that with a case study that kind of walks through a typical conversation, and that's available for download. We also have a podcast, and a couple of them, but here's one on mental capacity, and just want to kind of point that out. You can access the podcast by going to the PFP sections resource page and scroll down, and there's a podcast library button right there for you to see. So plenty of opportunities.
Oh, I'm sorry. And we'll include a link in the Town Hall newsletter to make sure that you can find those podcasts easily. Dan, I learned so much when you come on, and so I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and both the opportunities that we can use this in our personal lives and in our professional lives. So thank you for that.
Yeah, Lisa, Dan, a very important segment. Very well done. A lot of questions coming in here. So let me give you a couple, then we'll go to open forum with Gene and Mark. One is just around a number around the confidential client rule, client confidentiality. So managing that, who do you reach out to if you have no permission to talk to somebody? How do you manage that situation?
Well, the first step is certainly talking with your clients and helping them understand that this is a change that's happened in their life, and it allows them that it's going to require them over time to bring others into the conversation, regardless of whether the CPA is involved or not. And so as they come to that realization, it makes it a little bit easier for them to give you permission to be able then to talk to some of these other people. But that's probably the best way to kind of address that particular situation.
And I think that ties into the holistic life planning that so many CPAs are able to provide, but maybe kind of hold back from a little bit. Because if you're having those conversations with your clients on a regular basis, you can, ensure that you've got an authorization to discuss with family members in the event of an incapacity or something like that. So being more holistic about the approach to the client will serve them and serve you.
Well, Lisa, we've got some really good a couple of technical questions and we love these questions. It really helps us get smarter. So thank you. And I know you and Dan, the team, will be looking at those. So why don't we just go to open forum? We got Gene back, Mark. So lots of we very active audience. Well over 9,000 here on with us today. So Mark, I'll just kick things off, and Lisa, you can look at the questions as well regarding the non-compete. So you've got a non-compete that you've signed that's in place, and now this new rule. So what does it do for currently executed non-competes?
It's facts and circumstances. So it depends on it. Right now, if you could grandfather in basically a carve out. So there's the salary, and then there was the definition of senior. Okay, so those are two things, which means it would still hold. Or if it's a sale, or depending on the entity, because it's nonprofits and there are other entities that are not included in this. So it kind of depends on the facts and the circumstances. Going forward, new non-competes, once this goes final in 120 days, they will be much more stringent without some of those carve-outs, specifically the carve-outs related to salary and then definition of senior executive.
It's a good time to be a labor attorney.
Right, and there's some in the community here that are in favor of so there's a lot of people think the banning of non-competes is a good thing.
Sure. I mean, it definitely gives more mobility to employees, and the ability to start up businesses. So there's definitely in favor.
Lisa, questions that you see out there that you want to bring to the group?
I see one that I get quite frequently around right-sizing your client base and letting go of clients who may not have another CPA to go to. And, as CPAs, I think that we are so intensely loyal to our clients, to the detriment of our own health, to the detriment of our talent, to the detriment of running a business. And I don't want to sound, like taking care of your clients isn't important, but you also have to factor in everything else. There are CPAs out there who are starting their own firms who might be looking for 1040 only clients because that's where they want to build their base. There are firms who will specialize in 1040 only clients. There's a top 100 firm creating a service area only around 1040 only clients so that they can create efficiencies and drive processes. If you choose to keep those clients, then just be thinking about how you're managing them. How are you managing expectations? Are you extending them so that you can do them after busy season and taking ownership of the firm so that you're not running yourself into the ground and running your talent into the ground?
And Lisa, well said. And I think there's technologies that are going to be coming out over the next 6 months, next 18 months that are going to make processing 1040s, more efficient for firms. I mean, it's over the last 30 years, software's played a huge role. It's gonna accelerate over the next 2 years. The role it's playing. And one thing, when you looked at the stats about this past tax season, the 2023 tax season, outsourcing is a key thing. So even though there's technologies coming, individuals could do their return using the do-it-yourself software.
Sure.
They don't want to. They want other people to run the machines. So as these machines get better and better, the AI gets better and better. It's going to be something that the firms will harness, and they'll provide better value to their clients. We're here at the end, but I do want you, Gene. I want to thank you and us offer. Do you want to say anything about the last segment related to elder care planning?
It is. Listen, I also have a mom that's in in a home as well, and again, it's another opportunity. It's not for everyone. Mm-hmm. I mean, Eric. I mean, it takes a certain level of empathy and a certain type of personality to deal with clients and that have elderly parents. But as the demographics show, I mean, boomers are getting older, and it is another area that we can pursue. Mm-hmm. Pricing it is, I think, the biggest challenge. And that's something that has to be worked out.
Well, a lot of fantastic comments on all the segments. Mark, thank you. Gene, thank you. Dan, thank you. So Lisa, you and I can go through the final slides here and resources. PCPS survey Oh, you didn't
Yes,
see it?
thank
Here it
you.
is.
I hear that Michael Cerami did his best Lisa Simpson last town hall. So I'm here to do my best Lisa Simpson and ask you to please take our top issues survey. This really helps us understand the pain points by firm size and helps us prioritize where we start developing resources. It's quick, it's easy, it's a little bit of venting, a little bit of therapy, and it just takes 10 minutes. So if you can do that for us, we've extended the date by 5 days.
You did a pretty good Lisa Simpson there. So, and now we've got J of a very interesting issue coming up, focusing on fraud, talking about AI as well.
And absolutely, I think fraud is such an important topic in the profession. So kudos to the J of A staff for focusing in on that one, and to the cover. I love that cover.
And this will be the next town hall. Lisa, you and I will be together. And we'll be coming to the town hall community live from the AICPA council meeting, which is the governing body of the AICPA, made up of 50 plus state societies. So we look forward to that. Barry Melanson will be with us, as well as one of our tax leads, Melanie Lauritsen. So that's all for now. Lisa, great being with you today. Great being with the team. We look forward to seeing all of you in a few weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for your participation. You can now subscribe to the AICPA Town Hall series on your favorite podcast platform, as well as watch archives on YouTube and AICPA TV. Tune in for live broadcasts Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time.